Hey team, welcome back to the Building Better Humans Project podcast. This is Mayhem Mondays, and of course that means we've got
Mayhem.
Mili Mayhem in the building.
Hello.
Again, I just want to give a shout out to everyone that's been sending us questions and giving us feedback. The feedback's actually been really good.
Yeah, we've had really good things come through, so very happy about that. Thank you, guys.
I like what we're doing, but also I know we'll get better at it the more we do it together. And I've really enjoyed, as I've said in previous episodes, having Mili here and sharing a bit of our inside story.
Yep.
Before we kick into today's episode, which Mili will talk about, I just want to give a shout out to Luke in Melbourne from Bones Boxing. So I'm repping the Bones Boxing. Luke's one of the best trainers in Australia, in my opinion. And whenever we're in Victoria, I've always been able to take fighters there. So I look forward to when we get to go down there.
I can't wait.
He's got some really good girls there for us to spar.
Yeah, let's go.
So that'll help us prep for the Com Games. So shout out to Luke and Bones Boxing if you're in Melbourne.
Hey, Luke.
You want a good boxing gym? Not sponsored, he's just a mate. Go there.
All right, so today I thought that we would do the questions that related around our relationship. I'll start by saying I got feedback on the one before last podcast where there was that question about the age gap and abuse of power. And Linda Saul, my mother, just thought that we came across a little bit defensive. So we took that as feedback. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, mums.
And we don't mind feedback, to be honest. And I'd like to say I didn't intend to be defensive. We're open to you sending us positive messages, negative messages, and everything in between. Obviously, if they're too left of centre, we wouldn't share them if we don't have a positive thing to say about them. But I don't mind that question. I understand the age gap in particular, for whatever reason, challenges people.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because you're not in the relationship, so it shouldn't worry you, but I understand.
I was more sort of put off, I guess, by the abuse of power bit.
Yeah.
Just because it's accusing you of something and it's assuming something of me. So
Yeah, fair.
so that's what I was annoyed with. Other than that, I don't really mind, that people are challenged by the age gap. It's fair enough, I guess. So
And we even had some feedback with the last episode, which was there was a question, calling me a grandpa and all that sort of stuff. And people were surprised that the way I reacted, but I legitimately don't care.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned this to Mili this morning, actually, that I've never worried about aging. I think it's a privilege. Certainly coming from a military background, there are people in my world that haven't made it to 50. So I think turning 50 is a privilege. If you go to the war cemetery in Bamana in PNG, which is the biggest Australian war cemetery in the world and the largest war cemetery in the Southern Hemisphere, there are kids in there 18, 19, 20. So I'll never complain about my age because I've lived in that world and there was every opportunity that I might not have made it to this age. So I'm very thankful to be this age.
Yeah, love it.
So anyway, on to relationships.
All right, I might start off with some feedback. There's a couple in here that we decided to share. There were a few other ones that were feedback, but they're not necessarily, I guess, I don't know what the word is, like...
Positive? Are they not positive?
No, they are, but it's just like a little bit... why am I so stuck on words today?
Are these ones that are about your looks or...
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like, particularly as a woman, because I don't get that feedback on mine, but as a woman, I can understand that...
Someone said the other week you're attractive, and that was on your thing, so it might have been you.
Oh.
Might have been for you. I know he is, guys.
Don't send any more of those. No, but I watched a thing with Halle Berry recently. You would have seen this video where she said that I've lived to get to an age where people stopped just complimenting me on my looks.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more depth to me than my looks.
I love that.
And I thought that's pretty cool because, particularly in Hollywood, she's now in her 50s and saying that, she's still an attractive woman in her 50s, but she's now at an age where she feels like people are justifying her body of work as opposed to her body.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. Having said that, as an athlete, your body of work is your body as well. So I guess there's that. But for her, she's done directing and things behind the camera and all everyone wanted to talk about was her looks.
Yeah, I'd definitely rather be complimented on the way that my body moves rather than the way that it looks, which is one of the reasons I didn't continue bodybuilding. But I'm going to get so much hate from bodybuilders. No shade, guys. You guys work very hard. It's actually a really hard thing to do.
Millie
so shout out to you guys.
As we're recording this, she's about to head into a pro fight. So we're in weight cut, 3 or 4 days out from weight cut. Millie's a foodie. She's an amazing cook, but also loves to eat out. So really, it's more of a respect to bodybuilders that you have the capacity to do this for 8 weeks or more. Because
more. They have a long, prep and
so the dedication to that craft is crazy.
Yeah, they're restricted for quite a long period of time, whereas we're pretty much only restricted for about a week if you do it right.
Yeah.
Unless you have to do a massive, you're going to the next weight division down or something like that, then you have to be in a deficit for a little bit longer than that, but that all depends on where you started.
Yeah.
All right, let's delve into relationship feedback. So this one says, we've never met in person, but honestly have never seen Glenn look so alive since being with you. How could anyone throw shade on that is beyond me. Wishing you pair the best, X.
Thank you.
Love that. Thank you so much.
That's the other thing. I think it's okay to be positive about other people doing positive things.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We're not hurting anyone.
I was listening to someone recently and I shared this. It was Tim Minchin, who's one of my favourite people, and he was giving advice to uni students, to graduates, and he said, spend your life being pro something, not anti something.
Yeah.
He said, so often we want to be negative about things in life and justify our lives by what we don't like.
Yeah.
And he said, just be positive. I'd be pro stuff.
Or even people like bond over stuff that they mutually hate. Let's bond over stuff that we love.
Yeah.
Why not that? All right. I hope he treats you good because I do. Oh,
I think I do.
You do. You do very much. Okay, I'll read it. I hope he treats you good because I'd do anything to be with someone like you, even just to take you on a date. So I was.
So I want to know where we're going
because
we have to, all three of us go.
Yeah, where are we going,
Preferably somewhere with
guys?
steak. Moo.
Steak and
Not sponsored by Moo, but if they want to.
we would love that. We would.
That's an interesting
love
one
that.
for me. Like, I love the feedback and saying I hope everyone treats everyone good, right? But also saying that I'd love to date someone like you. What does that mean? Because really we can only know from the outside the shell of you, or the bits of you that you share.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously I'm going to say you would want to date someone like you because I get to live with you 24/7, and it's majority of the time that's pretty good. We're all humans, but yeah, like
he said it like 24/7. Jeez, babe.
It's like 24 hours in a day, and I feel like I'm being dragged through all 26 of them. No, I'm joking.
So mean.
Never.
You are sleeping on the couch. All right, we'll move on to this one. What would you change about the other in a positive way? And I read this one and I was thinking, I honestly don't know, so I'm going to let you start.
I would.
I know.
I wish I'd pre-read these questions. I know we'd heard them before, but I hadn't really thought about it. But if I could change anything about you, I would love you to see yourself from my eyes, because you're confident and all of that sort of stuff, but you've been through some pretty hectic stuff in your life, I'll say at the hands of men or at the behaviour of men. And I think for some women, or probably any, either side of genders, I guess, we can start to see ourselves validated in a certain way only if we toe the line. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily you, but I just think that you're so much more than how you've been treated in the past, and I never want to contribute to that in any way, shape or form. And there are times where I definitely have, without realising it or without putting enough conscious thought into it, and then I hate myself for that because you're very quick to pull me up on stuff like that, which I love and hate.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say.
Yeah, I like it in the
it.
long term, but it's very uncomfortable in the short term.
Yeah.
But if you don't hold that standard for yourself, obviously then you'll continue to be treated a certain way. So I would love to see that. I would love to. The only thing I wish that I would change, and I've watched you change for the last 12 months, is your anger. Like you're such a passionate human that your anger could really spill into areas it probably shouldn't sometimes, and yet it works in other areas. And I've watched that change astronomically in the last 12 months.
Thanks, baby.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we trigger each other, which we do, it can be a case of, well, why is that still happening? But then when we calmer, we go, well, actually, it's improved so much for both of us.
Yeah.
The things that we do that trigger the other. So, yeah, I would just love you to see yourself through my eyes, because I think more people see you through my eyes than you realise.
Thanks, baby. I guess if there was one thing that I'd change about you, it would probably be, you know, that if, like you said before, when I do bring stuff up, you don't necessarily feel attacked or get defensive, which you don't always do, and
No,
it's
I do.
not.
I get super defensive.
It's not.
This happened this morning.
Oh my god.
To be fair,
Yeah.
like I get defensive because this is how I justify this, and it's not a true justification, but I think I'm doing all this stuff. Why is she attacking that thing?
But it's not attacking, so
I
we need
know.
to change that language first of all.
Pointing out, highlighting.
Oh god.
But again, I'm doing that for a shorter period of time than previous, and you're much calmer in bringing it up, saying, "Hey, I don't feel safe telling you this stuff if you're going to get defensive all the time."
Yep.
So yeah.
All right, this next one was mostly for me, but you could weigh in as well. So, what are your non-negotiables in men, and have they changed over the years? Definitely.
All right. So my
Like
non-negotiables
20s
in
to
men is that they're not to hit on Mili. No,
It's a good one.
no, you go. No, you're allowed to. It's all good.
My number one would be that they take accountability when they do something, or when they, I guess when I feel hurt by something that they did, and they definitely did do it. I'd love to see accountability. Even if you do get a little bit iffy at the start of that conversation, you always end up taking accountability and validating my feelings. So that would be probably number one. Number two is that they're, good to my boys. Yeah. And that they know that they're not going to come into my life and, mess anything up for them. I always cry. You stop crying. I'm hungry, guys. Yeah, there's a whole list of things, like, not doing the bare minimum and expecting me to be so happy by the bare minimum, because I have accepted the bare minimum in the past, and that's a whole other podcast of bare minimums. And
What's a bare minimum?
bare minimum would be, saying I love you, or words of affirmation for me is a bare minimum. So saying you look nice today, or things like that. A bare minimum would be something like carrying in the heavy things. Even though I'm pretty strong myself, I just like to see a man take that role. That's a bare minimum. So often you'll be like, you'll have friends go to me, oh, he carries all my stuff for me. And it's like, cool.
Yeah, that's a bare minimum.
That's a bare minimum.
Yeah. The love language one, the saying I love you and saying you look good, that's definitely one that's challenged me or us over time, because we're really busy, and that's a really crappy excuse, but we're really busy. And so sometimes we'd be boom, 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 boom on the move, we're organising, we're doing things, and you'll come downstairs and we'll go. And then I won't realise, but you'll say later, like 3 or 4 days in a row I've come down the stairs and you've not said anything to me.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, I love you in those particular blue pants, for example, or she's got a pink version, I love them on her. But I don't say it all the time. And my brain used to be, well, I said it once back then, and they're the same shorts and you're the same person, and I love you.
And then my counter argument for that one time was, well, I told you I love you back then, so I should never say that again, or what?
Which is fair.
So
my point is that's then I have to change a behaviour. And so, and then recently I was more active in saying I love you, and more active in saying, because I probably don't use words of affirmation enough. And then this is a counter side to that. And then you said, well, you only love me now because I'm in weight cut, which is not true, because you've made an association that's not true. I said, no, I'm telling you I love you more because you
I think that was
pointed
the
out that I wasn't
carb-starved
doing it.
brain talking. I know full well that that's silly.
But my point to that is that this is a relationship is a constant conversation.
Yeah.
And you're never getting it 100% right. And neither is the other person. And it's been willing and able to meet each other halfway if need be, or 70-30, or whatever that needs to be.
Yeah.
But I'd like to expand on that question, or maybe dig into what they said, which is, what has changed? Like a 20-year-old girl, or a 15-year-old girl, 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old, what sort of changes in what you expect of a man? Because I think, from my point of view, a 15-year-old is probably very happy for someone just to show them attention, just to tell them they're attractive. Might treat them terribly, and we've all watched this happen. I've watched this happen with my daughters, where they treat them terribly, but they say nice things, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And then you get to an age where you go, oh, that's not enough for me anymore. Like, you're just saying it. I need to feel it.
Yeah.
When you think about when you're 16 or 17, if you're going out with a boy who's got a car and a license, that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know as a male who was 16 riding around in your push bike, it was hard to pick up another 16-year-old girl because she's going out with someone in a car.
Yeah,
so that's
she's like, I'm not getting on the back of your push
I'm
bike,
like,
mate.
no, you can sit on the front of the handlebars.
She's like, not that either. Cute, but no.
But so yeah, what in a more tangible sense, what has changed? In
Lots
your
of things.
tastes?
So, at the start, we spoke about how I've been through things at the hands of men, I guess. And my accountability piece in that is that I allowed things, boundaries. I didn't set them. I just thought I was the cool girl. And, the kids call it a pick-me girl these days. I guess I showed. You've not heard it? No. It's like they do and say anything to be picked. So, so they'll act in a certain way, or they'll say certain things that they might not necessarily feel, just to be liked and to be picked by the opposite sex, I guess.
Okay.
It's just a pick me sort of thing. So things that I would let go, I definitely wouldn't let go anymore. And back then, it was simply because I wanted to be liked. And so, yeah.
Do you think people then have to be more comfortable with the fact that you could end up on your own? As in, if I hold a really high standard, and I've heard this fear in people before, what if I'm on my own? And I say, what if you're on your own? That's fine. I spent 10 years on my own because I had a different standard all of a sudden until you came along. And so you've got to be really comfortable to be on your own, before you can really contribute to someone else. Because we've definitely had some issues in our relationship around my stuff in relationships, and yet I spent 10 years pretty much being on my own, working on my stuff. So I'm a better person now than I was 10 years ago, but then I probably wasn't still great in understanding relationships, without going too deeply into that. Because it's not about pulling me apart, I'm just saying. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, good.
There's honestly, we could go on all day about the non-negotiables in men, but yeah. Accountability, you got to be good to my boys. And you got to not do the bare minimum. And again, the bare minimum is a whole other podcast as well. Take feedback and absolutely. But some of my friends will be like, "Oh, he held my hand as I crossed the river." Bare minimum. Yeah. That's not like, "Oh my God, he's such a good guy." That's just the bare minimum.
This sounds like common sense when we're having this conversation, but I'll say, I heard this saying years ago that common sense isn't common, as in not everyone does it.
Yeah.
And I remember us going out for a walk, run, whatever, once, I think a walk, and I jumped over this water puddle and I kept walking, and then I turned back later, and by then you had negotiated it, and I thought nothing of it. But then a little bit later on, you said you made no effort to help me cross that, or even to look if I was okay.
Yeah, you just stood there. You didn't even look back.
So I think she's very capable. But again, you set a standard.
Yes.
And once you set a standard, no matter how much you love someone, you should continue to set that standard, and it's their job to step up to that standard and not feel offended by it when they don't reach it.
Obviously, being committed and faithful to the relationship is a non-negotiable and a bare minimum. Yeah. So, lots of things, but we'll move on.
Honesty is a big one for Mel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I heard a thing recently that said, honesty, and this was like 2 days ago I read this, and I hadn't shared this with you, but it said there's a difference between honesty and transparency, and I think you'll like this.
Yeah.
Honesty is, I'll tell you the truth.
When I ask you.
When you ask me.
Transparency is just saying it without having to be asked, or I'm very transparent with you. Yeah, I like both transparency and honesty. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. Too many things.
I knew you'd like that, so I thought I'd save it for a podcast.
All right. Do you believe in love at first sight, unconditional love, true love, and that kind of stuff? Because God knows I've tried to find it and zero luck. I'm at the men suck stage of life.
For me, I don't know about love at first sight. I don't know that. But I know, if I could just talk to the first part of that question, because I'm not at the men suck stage of life, but I understand. When we first met, I'm not going to say love at first sight, but there was definitely an energy.
Yeah, I agree.
That was just like, she left me. It was on my birthday. I think I've told this story on the podcast before. On my birthday, I was training a heap of athletes who were overseas, Millie wanted to do a session, just one session, to see if she was good or not, because she'd had some issues with an old trainer where they kept pulling her out of a fight. And so she just said to me, I just want to know if I'm shit or not, and be honest with me.
Yeah.
So I did a session with her. I said, I'll do a session. And then after the session, I said, well, you're not shit, but there's a lot of stuff you could work on. So just honest feedback. And then I didn't know if we're going to train again, but we're leaving. As we're leaving, it's kind of getting late. And I can't remember the exact conversation, but you said to me something about what were you doing today, and I just nothing.
It was
much.
your birthday.
And I said, today's my birthday.
It was your 50th birthday.
Yeah, and I said, today's my birthday. And then Millie said, well, what'd you do? And I said, oh, I'm not really big on birthdays. And she doesn't know me at this stage.
He said it's just a day.
Yeah, which has always been my belief. And she said, no, something along the lines of the world would be a different place or a worse place for certain people, if you weren't here.
I said there's so many people's lives would be just a little bit different if you weren't here. So that's something that you should definitely celebrate.
Yeah. Now, I disagreed about the birthday thing, but she left, and I felt this really positive energy. I thought, that was a really interesting interaction. And none of that was based off the physical you at that stage, or the boxer you, it was just something. I don't know what it was. So I don't know if you would call that love at first sight, but there definitely was a connection.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then obviously after that, besides training, we spent a lot of time going to breakfast and having really deep conversations about stuff. And that was when that real connection started, I think, in hindsight. Yeah. But that's the first part of the question. I'll let you deal with the...
And then do you believe in unconditional love, true love, and that kind of stuff? So that's the other part.
Now, I don't really know what unconditional or true love is. I think we have unconditional love for children, for our children, because they're our blood.
Yep.
And to the point where, and this is a really challenging thought, that even if your children did the worst crime, you can hate that crime and you could be devastated what they did, but I feel like a part of you would still... They're still your blood.
You'd still love them.
Yeah. I don't know if they're a mass murderer or something, but yeah, I don't know. That's a really interesting one. Whereas I think love is conditional. It's like, I love you. I really do. And I say that publicly, and I say that to you, and you know that. But I've always said, like, if you cheated on me, and I found out, obviously, I think I would still love you, and it would hurt incredibly, but I couldn't be with you.
Yeah, maybe people say use the term unconditional love as in no matter what you do, I'd stay, which is not true for most people, you know.
It shouldn't be true.
It shouldn't be true. It definitely shouldn't be true. So if somebody steps out on your relationship, or if somebody, you know, backstabs you or talks badly behind your back, and that's supposed to be your person, or doesn't defend you, and which is another podcast altogether. You should feel the love back, and that person should love you and treat you the way that you would do for them.
I can say with absolute confidence that nobody would speak badly about you to me and have me participating in that. At any level. Yeah. And I've always hated that since I was a young man and a single man. In the army, that was a really big thing. Blokes, mostly men, when I joined the army, blokes would be sitting around and like bagging out their wives. And I was a young teenager, and I used to think, that's your wife.
Yeah.
Like, why would you be talking crap about your wife?
Yeah.
But it's just to be cool with your mates over a beer or whatever. And I'd never quite understood that.
Yeah.
And for all the faults of my father, and, you know, I have a strained relationship with my parents, I don't think I ever heard him do that. He did a lot of other things, but I don't really think I ever heard him openly disrespect my mother to other people.
Yeah.
Things happened in the house that shouldn't have happened, but so maybe there was at least that standard I gained. And I feel confident you would not do the same to me.
No.
But if you're not sure if your partner would stand up for you, that's a little bit hectic.
Yeah. So this girl said, or boy said, I'm at this men suck stage of life. So... yeah, that's a hard place to be, but I guess keep your for sure. But keep your standards, and then your person will come. Yeah.
And if they don't as well. Like, to be honest, when I turned 50, I said to myself, I will never have another relationship now, because I'd spent a few years not having one, and I just thought once I'd turned 50, if I'm not in a relationship now, I'm not going to be in a relationship. I'm just going to focus on business and Christian in particular, because the other kids are all, you know, grown up and able to do their own thing or growing up. But I just thought that's what I'm going to focus on.
Yeah.
So, and that was a decision in my mind, because up until then, nothing had happened. Like, I'm not an online dating guy, so I'm not going to be on apps. I'm not going through that awkward, you know what I'm like to go out socially anyway, let alone have an awkward first date with someone that I've just seen a picture of. That's just a hard no for me. And so I just decided that, and interestingly, that's when you come along.
Yeah.
So you don't know, is my point. You don't know when someone might, they may never, but the truth is, my experience now is if you're not pushing it, because people go, oh, it'll happen when you least expect it. And I think, well, load of garbage. But it happened.
Yeah, it did happen. I guess focus on yourself first and foremost, and don't put so much energy into finding that person.
Yeah.
You know, and if that person comes, they'll come.
But also you've got to be happy and healthy within yourself.
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
Said,
Yeah.
because
So work on yourself.
otherwise you drag all that into the relationship anyway.
For sure. All right, there were a number of questions that were around sex, but I picked one because some of them were a little bit like meh.
Yeah.
So
I didn't really want to talk about our sex life, or,
no, we're not
or other people's sex life.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But this one was just a real general one, so I thought I'd put it out there. And I guess when we put our next NGL link, I'd like people to weigh in on this. That would be good. But this one is, how many times do you think it's normal for couples to have sex in a week? And honestly, that's just such a personal preference.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one to answer.
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. So
I would say that you've got to be aligned.
yeah,
in that,
100%.
because if you're a once a week person and your partner's a once a week person, there's no problem there.
Yeah.
Or if you're a once a month person, no problem there. But for some people, they're definitely going to have a higher sex drive or a higher expectation around that, and that is one of their love languages, then I think you need to have that discussion.
Yeah, because that could just cause conflict and ongoing issues, you know.
100. And
one person could feel, undesired, and yeah.
Yeah, and I can say we've had those conversations around, because I get very focused on work. I work 24 hours a day sometimes if I can. Like, I'll just work until I'm exhausted, collapse, go to bed, get up and go again. And Millie's not about that.
Yeah.
Like, she works hard, don't get me wrong, but she also absolutely insists on that personalised attention. And I'm not just talking sexy, I'm talking attention.
Yeah.
So not just the bare minimum again for her is that you're just there coexisting with each other. Like, no, I'm not doing that.
No,
because
I
can
don't
do
need
that
a
on my own.
roommate.
Yeah. But yeah, she says she doesn't need a roommate, but one thing I will say is we always say we're best friends.
Yeah.
And we always joke about, or you joke about it more about when we're laying in bed the other night, you said this, it's like having a sleepover with my best friend. and I like that we have that best friend energy, because some people have their best friends and then their relationships.
Yeah.
And I feel like you should be the best friend that I have. You should be the person that I tell everything to.
Yeah.
So I was actually just with a friend of ours, Simon Orton, who's a boxing coach at Eastside Boxing, and he told me an interesting story, which I really loved, actually. It's kind of tied in, not the sex question so much, but what I just talked about best friends and your relationship. And he was talking about a young Irish boxer years ago that he'd worked with, and there was someone that Simon said, oh, you're going to go over and see this guy who was a specialist in an area. And this young fellow was only 21, and he said no. He said, and Simon said, oh, why not? He said, because he cheats on his wife. Simon said, what's that got to do with you and the business of what you're doing? He said, well, think about this. Who's the person you tell your darkest secrets to, or everything you tell everyone to? And he said, your wife. And you're going home to her every night, and then he's cheating on her? How can I trust him with my information?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, what a crazy perspective for a 21-year-old to have.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
Yeah, that's the importance of your person. We tell each other everything.
Yeah.
So if we then cheated on each other and had a distrust there, how can anyone else trust us?
Yeah.
Because if you can't trust this, that's just a perspective.
I saw this guy, like business guy on Instagram, and he said, I don't do business with anyone who cheats on their wife, because if she can't trust him, I definitely can't trust him as a business partner.
You've committed to that person.
Yeah. So if you're going to
So there's a
step out,
perspective.
how you do anything is how you do everything.
100.
All right. How do you two handle conflict? You both have strong personalities. Surely that creates issues sometimes. We've
Yes.
delved a little bit on it in this podcast and this particular episode. Yeah, we talk it through. Like I said, sometimes in the beginning of the conflict, one or both of us may get defensive, and we, might get a little bit angry, or that's me. I definitely need space when that happens, just to calm down, just to think about it, just to get over it, and to actually properly think about it, because my emotions do get too much. And
You
so,
know how to regulate yourself, and you need space. And then I'm not good at giving her space. Yeah, and early on, there was a time where you didn't speak to me for we weren't living together, like 24 hours or maybe 48 hours, I don't know, but there was a time frame. And that was a killer for me. But for Millie, it was no big deal. It was like, hey, I just need that space, right? And I remember saying to you, that's cool, but space to me means that you're running away or you're leaving me or I catastrophize that situation because that's how I feel the experience.
Yeah.
And so I said, all I need from you is to say, look, I love you, but you need to give me space. And I think we've been better at that. Or I don't question the love anymore like I did early in the relationship. I naturally question love because that's my triggers. So I would answer that, yes, we're strong personalities. Communication is always going to be the key.
We definitely also both own our piece when we come back to each other. So that's really, really important, is owning your piece in whatever happened.
Once I'm calm as well, as in I'm not emotionally triggered, because when I don't become calm, I don't really get angry, but I have these emotional triggers. Once I'm calm, I'm always happy to apologise. I struggle to do it in the moment, but afterwards I'm happy to say, even a lot of men in particular do not like to apologise because that's a sign of weakness.
Yeah, it's pathetic, really.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but it's a sign of weakness to men. And so it's about understanding that I don't have to pretend to be strong in front of this woman because this is my woman and I'm her man. So, and we always refer to each other even as king and queen for each other. So if I've got to try and pretend to be strong in front of her at the risk of emotionally damaging her, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it takes maturity to get to that. Like, and it's the 40-year-old me wouldn't have done that. The 30-year-old me definitely wouldn't have done that. And so I'm at a different stage. So then let's refer back to the age gap. This age gap and my maturity now probably works because I have a different maturity that you need. Yep. And we have sides to each other that are different. So the sides to each other that are different is I have that maturity and that calmness most of the time. I can apologise. I can do all those sort of stuff. And then from Millie's side, she gives me accountability that not many people give me because most people, just due to my personality, tell me what I want to hear. Yeah. And it was really challenging for me. I wanted it, but it was also challenging for me to have someone that just hit you between the eyes with stuff. And her answer was always, well, I told you that's how I was.
I don't like to sugarcoat stuff, and that's not saying that I come across mean when I tell you. I just definitely tell you what this is, how I felt when it happened.
Yeah, you're very clear.
What I think that, I like to be clear. So it's not that I want to be mean, it's just that I like to be clear.
But then Millie's answer is it offensive? Like also that's offensive, or is it offensive, or are you just being offended? And that's a choice, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think you have to trust each other's intention. Yeah. So I have to know that your intention is that you love me. I'm not because I would regularly say to her too early after an argument, "Do you love me?" And she'd say, "Why do you ask me stupid questions?" But it's because, yes, I love you, but right now I just need that space. Yeah. And so understanding each other is really important.
I really love that one about intentions because I did a hypnotherapy session just around my anger and how I can regulate that a little bit more. And one thing that always stuck with me that the lady said was there's always a good intention behind a bad emotion. So you got to find that good intention and then, try and leave the bad. Yeah.
Why does that make you emotional?
I don't know, because I hate being mad, at things. I just like to, why do you have to say that? I don't want to cry.
Well, because I want to recognise the emotion that's there. And this is, people talk about safe spaces for conversations, and we live our lives very publicly. Yeah. And you're showing an emotion in a safe space, but we're doing it publicly. And I think we're very strong people. And I think it's okay for people out there watching to see that we go through these things.
Yeah, I've definitely struggled with my temper. It's very quick and sharp. And I guess I'm just gotten to a point where I'm had enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I react a lot quicker. Not anymore, but it did definitely get to a point where it was so much for me. There was a lot going on in my life.
You would react quick and it would last for a long time. And both of those have changed.
They have, yeah. So.
But also to recognise that emotion. I remember early days, and maybe not so much anymore, but after we'd settled, even if you were right in whatever the discussion or argument was, you would say to me, you would then get upset and say, and I'd say, what's wrong? Because I thought we'd resolved it. And you used to say, you're going to leave me because of my anger. Yeah. And I'm saying, I'm not. Because I would have already left if that was the issue, because it was worse a year ago or 18 months ago when we first met compared to what it is now. And then I guess I've felt the same at times. And all this is to tell you guys that we're not insecure people, but we all have insecurities. And so don't judge yourself or on your emotions. It's okay to feel emotions. And I was spent my whole childhood, because my old man was a very tough ex-military guy, I spent my whole military career where emotions were pushed down, seen and not heard, man up, all of that stuff that men get told. And then what you need to understand as a man, that you just come across to the woman in your life, if that's your relationship, where you're insensitive, where you have no emotions, where you don't care. And I used to think, I care deeply, I just don't have the capacity to show it. And I've embraced that. I would have cried in front of Mili more than I've cried in front of any human in my life. And I used to feel weak when I did that. And you used to get annoyed at that. She'd go, it's not weak, it's okay. But this is my safest space, and I don't mind saying that. And so I'm your safe space, always.
Love you. All right, this one is for you.
Okay.
Sorry. A few years ago, you said that you wanted to stay single forever. How did that change so quickly? What's special about Mili? Everything.
That's such a deep question.
Everything.
I don't know that it changed so quickly, I guess, but maybe.
No, because we knew each other for quite some time before anything happened. So it's not that I just came into your life and just changed you like that, or changed your views on relationships, or whether or not you wanted to be with somebody or alone.
I've had people say to me, "Oh, you're not the person I thought you were," because all of a sudden I was interested in and wanting to be in and defending my relationship. Whereas before it was all taken leave, like not interested, just not interested, right? So I had a guy years ago, he come and saw me at another gym I was working at, and he said, my wife wants to introduce you to this woman. And I said, I'm just not interested. I was just really honest, I'm not interested. And he's describing her, and she's this and she's that, and she's attractive. And I said, none of that matters to me. I'm just telling you I'm not interested, because I knew I wasn't ready back then or interested. And then he did say to me that, she's got an autistic son and you've got an autistic son. And I said, they're not like staffies. We're not like both into staffies. Like,
there's not like a club and people could join the Facebook group, and there might be, who knows.
But also, I think bringing my special needs child and your special needs child together just would be drama. But then his wife came in and said, so I was talking to, and I said, no, I've already told him I'm not interested. And that's happened to me a couple of times where people have tried to set me up. So I guess I definitely wasn't ready, and I didn't even want to meet anyone. But I also know then I wasn't comfortable with my personal development yet. So all the stuff that happened as a child and through some of my early military career, I hadn't properly processed it. And I know that because my daughter Alyssa had a book written about her from when she was climbing Everest. And they would write all the chapters, and there's a little bits about my background, not huge and deep stuff, but they interviewed my dad, and he just made a few comments, really, I think, not that bigger comments, but mentioned that I was always a soft and a weak child, and he used to always put me down when I was younger, and that made me really emotional when I read it, and that's when I realised, you haven't processed this stuff, you've just hidden it, you've just buried it, because I was in Sydney at the time. I went and met with the author. They'd give you all these random chapters, like chapter 13, chapter 10, it wasn't in order, and I remember reading that chapter, and I was on my own, and I was in a hotel, and I went to the hotel room, and I felt physically ill. And I slept for about 5 hours in the middle of the day because I just felt sick and emotional. And that's when I knew, okay, you haven't dealt with this stuff.
Yeah.
So why would you take that into a relationship? That's not fair. Yeah. And now I'm at a stage where I've processed all of that. So that's the first part of it. Secondly, I knew it was going to take someone special. And Mili's 100% that person for me, because I've told you things I've never told anyone. And I've never felt judged. And you've been through some hectic stuff too. And you're not judged, right? Like, we are introducing pieces of ourselves to you, but not all of ourselves, because there's depths to us that nobody bar each other deserves to know. And there are sides of me that you will never know that Mili will, and I hope vice versa.
Yes.
So now we're at a stage where I can't think of anything that would be off topic to us, for us personally. But it doesn't mean it's open for public consumption. So when you find that level of a relationship, and if you don't have that level of trust and that level of communication, I would question that on the long term.
Yeah.
So that was I couldn't even tell you what's special about you. Like, it's too deep, to be honest, because we've said this in the past, that wherever we go, and Mili will hate me saying this, but people always compliment you on your looks. Men in particular will look and they'll compliment you. We went out to a bar once and I was sitting down and Millie went up to the bar to order some food or something, and a guy was trying to chat you up, and you just said you were here with me, and it was good. He left it, but some men don't. And so you're used to that, but I was saying, yeah, they're looking at this package. What I love, and I'm not offended by that because you're beautiful, right? But what I love is that they don't get to see the depths of you. Only I get to see that.
Yeah.
Some people in our closer circles will get a piece of that, but they still don't get the depth that I get.
No.
And that's pretty special.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Lovely.
I don't know if I really answered all that question, but that's I honestly don't know how that changed, but I don't think it was so suddenly.
Nah.
It might have just seemed on the surface publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next one. As someone who struggles to find a partner who gets my ambition, seeing you to support each other so fiercely gives me hope. How did you know you'd found the right person? We used to sit at coffee and you'd tell me the things that you wanted to do and I'd tell you the things that I wanted to do in life. And some people, and we've said this to each other, some people would think that those goals and dreams are so vastly out of the picture. Like, how can you even dream that because of where you are right now? But we never did that to each other.
No.
So we both saw each other's goals, saw each other's dreams, and didn't try and tear them down or didn't even make any sort of negative remark around them like, oh, that's a little bit big, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, we never did any of that. So I guess that was one thing that we saw in each other was big ambition.
I love ambition, right? And I've been in relationships in the past with people. And please don't take this as disrespect to anyone that I've seen in the past. I think everyone in our past just weren't the right people in the right time. None of them necessarily are bad people.
No.
And I don't think we're
lessons.
bad people. I just think you're not the right people for each other. But one thing that used to kill me is people that have no ambition.
Yeah.
And they're just happy to sit and watch TV every night, and I can't do that. And then when you start to talk about things, it's like, like they're either fully disinterested or they tell you all the reasons it won't work.
Yeah.
And that used to kill me because I'm an ideas man and I get really excited by things.
Like, we're looking for solutions, not problems.
Yeah.
When
And I'm
I
happy
get there.
for you to totally disagree with it, but don't just pour water straight on it.
Yeah.
Just say, okay, even if it's, oh, cool, babe, I understand what you're saying, but, have you thought about this and this and this? But I never had that. I just had people that were like, full level disinterest.
Yeah.
And I used to feel like a little bit of my soul was just like, what am I doing? And I've never had that with you. In fact, we both dream big. I'll get easily excited by ideas and I'll just start, as I said the other day in a podcast, I talk at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I get really amped. I will start writing out a whole business plan in my head for this thing that occasionally someone has to say, and that's merely like, let's just focus on this thing. So that's the downside. But I just don't want
because we want to do too many things. And it's not that I'm saying or we're saying that, you should stop thinking about that particular thing, but let's just focus on what we're doing right now and then we'll move on to the next. So it's not that I think that you should stop doing that because it won't work. It's just that we're not doing that right now. So let's just focus on what we're doing right now. But you're still such a hardworking person, as am I. And I guess it just works because we both understand that there's a vision at the end of this.
The other thing I love when you're working in and around people with ambition is they do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So one of the absolute things, it probably goes back to the last question about what makes Mili so special. I've always done whatever it takes. I've driven hours to do PT sessions for $50 back in the day because that's what was available to me. I've just done so much to get ahead, and I don't think about what other people think of it. I just show up and I do my thing. I've never put my hand out and begged off other people or waited for someone to save me. I've never been that guy. I'll just work harder.
Yeah.
If it means doing 10 Kokoda tracks this year, I'll do 10 Kokoda tracks. That's what I'll do. The adventure business this year is going through a lull. All adventure businesses are, when I'm talking to other trek leaders. So there's not as many trips available across the board. So I personally have to do more. Okay, then that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
You're the same. So Mili's one of the first people I've met that I've been this close to, that I've watched literally do whatever it takes and never whinge.
Yeah.
And we don't always love it, but we never whinge. We don't go, I wish someone else would. But then the downside of that is we've helped so many people that haven't respected it, that are happy to see you work your ass off. I don't want to do that. And then they become victims. So I think that's been really helpful, to be around people that are inspired.
Yeah.
Let alone the person in your life. Yeah. I wish for whoever that is to find that person for
Me
them.
too. Me too. I guess you just find someone else who has a very similar level of ambition and work ethic, and then they'll understand why you do the things that you do, and vice versa. But if you find somebody who is just happy to go along with life, and which is fine, but that's not your person.
So if I could give some advice in there, become friends with people first. Like if you're looking for a relationship, don't jump on it like, as a man, this beautiful woman who does all this sort of stuff, so I just want to have sex with her straight away and I want to have a relationship straight away. No, we got to know each other. We became friends. And I'm not against people having sex on first dates and all that, but I'm just saying don't be so desperate to be in a relationship that all the outside stuff, it's a little bit of a red flag, but I'm going to ignore it because I want to be in a relationship. Because down the track, those little red flags are going to be like absolute nightmares for you. And then the other person's going to go, I was always doing that.
Yeah.
That's always who I was. But I just wanted to be in a relationship. I didn't want to be in a relationship, to be honest. And you were in a very complicated situation. And so we just were good friends and talking about good things to the stage where we'd go out for breakfast or lunch. And an hour and a half later, neither of us wanted to leave. Not because we were romantically attracted to each other, but because the conversation was so good.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
No.
We still have really deep conversations. Everywhere we go, we drive. Sometimes I'll say to Mili, am I talking too much? And she goes, no, I love it. So I've never
And so that's why we decided also to share a Mayhem Monday, because of the fact that we do talk a lot about a lot of things. And yeah. All right. This next one.
I don't like that.
This next one's a bit, how you going? All right. Glenn doesn't seem like he'd be an emotionally supportive person. First of all, you're wrong. And then he says, am I wrong? Yes, you are.
Can I cut into that first part
Sure.
of the question? Am I different, do you think, than what you first expected? Because you had seen a bit of me online.
Yeah.
We'd met inadvertently at a boxing thing one day. So then you took a bit of an interest in me from a boxing point of view, I mean. Do I represent differently online to who you experience?
For me, not really. You definitely, the expectation, I guess, it's better than what I expected. Not saying that it's bad when you look online. You have a great online presence.
But I just had people that feedback I've had in the past is that I look aggressive or arrogant, but I actually am very emotional.
Yeah,
Probably people don't see
honestly,
that
I
online.
think that's just a projection on people's own feelings. Like, yeah.
All right, so go the whole question
right.
then, sorry.
Glenn doesn't seem like he'd be an emotionally supportive person. Am I wrong? I know you're strong, but you're still a woman, and we do need emotional support. Please don't take this as criticism. It's just an observation. So first of all, I would say, yes, you are wrong. He is one of the most emotionally supportive people that I've ever met, because that was one of my non-negotiables. If we can go back to non-negotiables, is to be supportive of me, emotionally.
Not just when it suits you.
No, exactly. So if you weren't, then, we'd be having a different conversation, because I've definitely upped my standards to where they used to be when I was a teenager or in my 20s, early 20s. So, yeah, I guess, yes, you are wrong. He's there for me whenever I need him. I could be crying and he's empathetic towards me, and he sits there and he understands why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Like earlier in the podcast, he wanted to know why I was crying. I'm crying now. But yeah, so you are wrong. So I guess a lot of the time we can assume what we want to assume, or not even want to assume, but we just assume things about people who we see on the internet, or maybe we've met a few times and we don't actually really know them. And that's not a bad thing. That's just a normal human thing. So yeah.
I think people get a misconception with me that I'm just hashtag the grind, hashtag the hustle, that I'm all about go, 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 and we don't stop. And that's not true. Like, I can be really busy, but when you need anything, I will stop.
Yeah.
I will hang up phone calls if Mili rings me, unless I was in the middle of a business call. But anyone else
That's
will
on
say,
my list.
Yeah,
We'll talk
anyone else
about
will
the
say,
list
hey,
later.
got to go. And I'll answer Mili, because I know that she needs to be seen and heard as opposed to just told. Like, it's not good enough for me to tell her when I get home of a night that I love her. Like, if we're apart even an hour, like you're just going to a medical appointment or I'm going to do something, it's not uncommon at all for either one of us to text the other one and say, I miss you.
Yeah.
And some people might go, oh, that's a bit needy. You've only been apart an hour. But that's just, you'll go to the gym sometimes and you'll message me and say, hey, I miss you.
Yeah.
And it's not saying, hey, you need to run after me right now at the gym. It's just saying, no, I miss you when we're not together. And I think it's okay to share those levels of feelings and emotions. And I definitely am a very emotional person. I'm a Cancer. If you're into star signs, hard exterior but soft interior. So the best way to do anything with me is to play on my emotions. If you attack me physically or verbally, I'm a fighter. I'll handle that. But if you're soft, then you're more likely to get what you want out of me, to give people an inner secret to me.
And you have given so much of your life, you know, physically, whether it be training athletes or taking people on walks or whatever. You've given so much financially, you've given so much emotionally, you've given lots of advice to people. You're definitely such a supportive person. And yeah, we said this to each other when we first started dating. It's like, I'd happily go to war with you. So 100%.
And that's our answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, would you go to war with this person? Because in war, you've got to trust people implicitly. I just want to acknowledge that question. I think it can sound like a challenging question, but it's been asked in such a nice way, the way they've finished it, to say, please don't take this as criticism. I'm just wondering. And so I just want to, whoever wrote that, say thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Sorry, I was on the wrong question. What are your strengths and weaknesses? How do you overcome one and utilize the other? I guess in a relationship sense. We've spoken about that really so far.
Today.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's too much that we
personally
can
then?
add to that.
So personally, we talked a week or two back about, like, one of my strengths is consistency. Like, I always like to show up, and I don't know how to strengthen that. Is just keep doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get focused in personal development or even as athletes on just working on their weaknesses. And I remember years ago, I ran a camp for the Ipswich Jets, and Ben Cross was a coach at the time, and some people didn't love his coaching style, some people did, but I always admired the way he did things, because I got up and talked to them about getting them to do a SWOT analysis, so their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities to improve, and the threats to them improving, which is a business format but used personally. They wrote such long lists about their weaknesses and very few around their strengths. And he got up, and I love this, and he said to them, I just want to remind you, men, that you are in this team for your strengths. So don't ignore them, because that's why I have you here. And so I want you to enhance your strengths. And if you improve your weaknesses, as long as it's not taking away from your strengths, because that's why you're in the team. So if you're a front row forward and you don't have a good step and whatever, well, who cares? That's not why I've got you in the team. But if you're a back or a centre and you can't step and pass, we've probably got a slightly different problem. So, and I took that away in a personal development sense to say, we're also focused on how do I improve my weakness? But your strengths are your strengths, and they should be enhanced too.
Yeah.
So my strengths are that I will show up.
Yeah.
If I say I'm going to do something, I will show up. I can be going through the most emotional trauma. I went into a talk years ago on the Gold Coast, and I received an email from someone very close to me that was a bit accusatory of some things that were very uncomfortable, and it was very devastating to read initially at the time, without understanding the mental health of this person and what was going on. That became clear later. But at the time, it was it hurt. It hit me right here. And I walked in and did that talk. And you've just got to show up and be that person. And then later on, I'll go and deal with that thing. Because the people who've employed me to run that session to inspire their team, they don't care about my baggage. They just care that I do what I'm paid to do. So from that point of view, how do you enhance your strengths? I think recognise them and just keep working on them and understanding their strengths. And then with your weaknesses, improve what you can, where you can, but not at the risk of your strengths.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. What are your strengths?
I would say my drive, my work ethic, and my ability to, I guess, which is a big one for me, and I've spoken about this on this podcast, on my page, so many things, my ability to continue what I'm doing regardless of what people say. So I've had a lot of negative feedback in my life based on my life, and that's, fair. People can feel and think however they want to think based on theirs. But regardless of what people say, what people think, I continue to do what I'm going to do, what I said I'm going to do.
I've seen very few people with your work ethic. Like, I've literally watched Mili not sleep for nearly 48 hours just between work and I'll say, maybe you should have a sleep. No, the kids' footy's on. We're going to the kids' footy. And then, I haven't done much with them this week, so we're going to take them out to the water park and I'm thinking, like, sis, you could have sleep somewhere in there. But you're so focused on doing the right thing for your people that you will literally just push through that and then go straight back to work and you've had an hour's sleep. I think, how are you doing that? But that's you. Your work ethic is astronomical. And I've always thought I've got a pretty good work ethic, but yours is solid.
Thank you. My weakness would be probably emotional control, as you can see with how many times I've cried today, and just my temper, which we have spoken about. But I will say that have been actively working on that for a number of years now, and I know my triggers and I try and deal with that very well. So,
good chat. I like that.
Good chat. That's it for the questions around the relationship. There was, like we said, lots of feedback ones, some that we've chosen not to share simply because they were too explicit or they were just a little bit unnecessary. Again, I don't like to be complimented on my looks so much unless it's from you.
And so, I don't understand men sometimes, I'll be really honest, and this is, a lot of women probably suffer from this, but some of the comments that you guys get on things, or because like you're in active where you're inviting these conversations around sexuality, like, it's okay to celebrate my physical body or to be happy with how I look without me saying I want your sexual attention. It's not that. So don't just assume that everything put online is to gratify you. Yeah. But that's what it seems to be. And I know I'm kind of generalising there, but that's just based off some of the things that come through. Yeah. Can be inappropriate. And I understand that some people are sending stuff through to try and offend. You're not going to get there.
Nah.
Like we work in personal development, which means we work on personal development as well. And so even if you wrote the hellest thing that was meant to trigger us, we'll deal with that ourselves. We're not going to sit on here and let that affect us because it changes the output we have to other people. So operate at a high level, I guess, is a message I'm saying there. And I'm as a man sending this message to men, just be better. Yeah. Because, if we want society to be better, we've each got to hold our role. And you've got to think about, I'm conscious of this, the young men that we're raising, I never want those boys to see me mistreat you. Because no one should ever see their mother disrespected. No. And no one should ever think, well, now that's how women are treated as a result of, and I'm fortunate that I watched mistreatment growing up, but I've never carried that behaviour out. I've never been domestically violent. I'm not saying I've been perfect in everything I do, but I've certainly not. So someone has to improve. I've not behaved the way my father behaved and so on. And I don't know where he learned it from, but I'm sure there's a carry on. But at some point, where does the buck stop? And I love this quote or idea, which isn't just around this, it's around life in general. But it said, your goal in life should be the best that your bloodline has ever seen. And that's what I want to do. Don't use your dad or your granddad as an excuse to keep doing what you do. Be the best that your bloodline has ever seen. And if you can do that, then you've made an impact in your family and in your world.
It can be unfortunate to listen to men sometimes because, they go, I want to be with somebody just like my mother. And that's apparently a psychological study where, women will seek out men like their dads and vice versa. But, then you'll ask a man like, oh, what was your mum like? And she's like, oh, she just put up with so much. She just did everything. It's like, so you want your wife to do that? You want your wife to put up with all your bullshit. You want your wife to do all of the things.
The next question is, do you want your daughter to put up that?
Yeah. So while I understand where they might be coming from, like she's such a strong woman for having been put through all that and still kept doing the things that she needed to do, she shouldn't have to put up with that and still, she should be treated amazingly because, women are amazing.
One thing I've learned from you, and maybe not directly from you, but from being with you, is that people might disagree with me on this, but I'm going to say this anyway, that as a man, when you're in a relationship with someone, this is your queen. And there's no lower standard. You don't lower from that point of view. So anytime you get given feedback from your queen that you're not getting something right, I do take it personally. But then on the other side of that, you go, okay, well, now it's time to be better. Yeah. And I wake up every morning, honestly, with the intention of being the best version I can. And I write a message to Mili every single day. And this morning, I wrote the message while I was making your coffee, because I make her a coffee every morning. And I said to her that making coffee for you in the morning is the best part of my day. It's how I like to start my day, because it's my act of service to the person that I love the most. And then everything else that happens in my day after that is good.
Yeah.
And if we have a little disagreement sometimes, there was a couple of weeks, or maybe last week, where I said, we're having a little disagreement about something. I said, "You want a coffee?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll make it myself." And I said, that actually really hurts me. Because making the coffee is more than just making the coffee.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I just, and in this morning's message, I just wanted to explain that to her. But to me, my message to finish off for this week's episode for men, and this is, I can't speak for everyone, is that if you've chosen a woman to be in your life and she's chosen to be in your life, that is your queen. Your mates don't come in between that. Your mum and dad don't come in between that. That is your queen.
Yeah, love it. I'll finish off with this. Someone sent through a piece of feedback. It's really nice. So we'll finish off on this. But they said, "I can feel the love through the screen. Thank you for showing that side of you guys." So thanks.
I've had that feedback a bit from people too, and I love that. So I'm
me
glad
too.
people are feeling it and experiencing it.
Yeah, same.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. Have a good week.